Your air conditioner is roaring. It is July. The thermostat says 76. You set it to 68, and above your head, in a space you visit twice a year, the temperature is past 140 degrees. The back of your neck is wet. The floor near the hallway feels warm under your socks. That attic is not protecting your house. It is cooking it. And every hour it cooks, your power meter spins, and somebody in a glass building cashes a check with your name on it. The Amish solved this 200 years ago. Lancaster County, Holmes County, no electricity, no fans, $4 in materials, 1 hour of work, any house built before 1980. The first time I walked into one of these Amish farmhouses outside Millersburg, in the middle of an August heat wave, I stood in the upstairs bedroom and looked for a vent. There was no vent. There was no fan. I had a 3-ton central air unit costing me $240 a month at home. Their upstairs bedroom was cooler than mine. They had no machine at all. I want to show you exactly what they do, what document I found buried in a university extension archive from 1943 that confirms it works, and why almost nobody talks about this anymore. If you already own your house, this is for you. You do not need to rebuild anything. You need about an hour and the right $4. Here is what most people get wrong about an attic. They think of it as part of the house. It is not. In a properly designed home, the attic is a sacrificial buffer. It is supposed to be a layer of air that takes the punishment of the sun, so the rooms below stay comfortable. But the way American houses have been built since roughly the 1960s, the attic stopped being a buffer and became a furnace. Builders sealed it up, stuffed it with the cheapest insulation they could find, punched in 2 undersized soffit vents and a single ridge vent, and called it done. Then they sold you a bigger air conditioner to compensate. The Amish never made that mistake because they could not. They never had electric air conditioning to fall back on. So when they built a house, every single decision had to actually work in real heat, with no machine to bail them out. And the technique they relied on most goes by an old name you may have heard your grandfather use, the cupola. Not the decorative kind you see on top of fancy garages today, the functional kind. A small wooden tower at the highest point of the roof, with louvered openings on all 4 sides and a clear vertical shaft running straight down through the attic, sometimes all the way to a hallway on the 2nd floor. That shaft is the engine of the whole system. Hot air rises. It always rises. In a sealed attic, that hot air has nowhere to go, so it just sits there baking through your ceiling drywall and pushing into your bedrooms all night long. In an Amish farmhouse, the cupola gives that hot air a chimney. The hottest air in the entire structure climbs to the top of that shaft, exits through the louvers, and pulls cooler air in behind it from the lower windows. They call it the stack effect. Engineers call it buoyancy-driven ventilation. The Amish just call it building a house, right? I read a paper from the University of Florida Extension Service dated 1943, written during the war when air conditioning was a luxury, and people had to think clearly about heat. The paper documented temperature drops of 14 to 1900 Kelvin inside upstairs rooms when a working cupola was added to a wood-frame farmhouse, 14 to 19 degrees, without a single watt of electricity. That paper sat in an archive for 80 years, while you and I paid power companies thousands of dollars to do worse than what a hole in the roof did for free. Now, you might be thinking, fine, but cupolas are expensive, and I cannot put one on my house this weekend. You are right. And that is exactly why I want to tell you about the second piece of this puzzle, because this is where the $4 comes in. And this is the part the Amish carpenters in Holmes County showed me that I had never seen written down anywhere. Inside their attics, where the rafters meet the ridge beam, they nail strips of untreated cotton muslin cloth across the underside of the roof boards. Just plain cotton. The same kind you can buy at any fabric store for about $1 a yard. 4 yards covers the average attic ridge in a 1,600 SQFT home. $4 total. The cotton does something I did not understand the first time I saw it. When the sun beats down on the shingles and the roof deck heats up to 160 degrees, the wood radiates that heat downward. Radiant heat does not care about insulation in the floor. It travels in straight lines and slams into whatever is below it. The cotton muslin breaks that. It absorbs a small amount of moisture from the night air, and during the day, as the roof heats up, the cotton releases that moisture as a slow evaporative cooling layer right at the source of the heat. It is the same principle as a wet bandana on the back of your neck, applied to the hottest part of your house. The Amish family I stayed with in Berlin, Ohio, had been doing this for 4 generations. The grandfather told me his own grandfather learned it from a Mennonite stonemason who emigrated from the Palatinate region of Germany in 1847. He said, "In the old country, they used linen. In Pennsylvania, cotton was cheaper, so they switched. The technique came over on a boat. Nobody patented it. Nobody sold it, so nobody knows about it." But here is where it gets uncomfortable. Because once you understand how simple this is, you have to ask yourself a hard question. Why did nobody ever tell you? Your father did not know. Your contractor did not know. The guy who sold you your last roof did not know. Or if he did, he had every reason in the world not to mention it. Think about who profits when your attic runs at 140 dB steers. The utility company profits. Every degree of heat that pushes through your ceiling forces your air conditioner to run longer. A typical 3-ton central air unit pulls about 3,500 W when it is working hard. Run that an extra 4 hours a day in July and August, and you are handing the power company somewhere between $60 and $90 a month that you would not have spent if your attic was venting properly. Multiply that by the roughly 140 million single-family homes in the United States, and you are looking at billions of dollars in revenue that exists entirely because builders stopped putting cupolas on roofs. The shingle manufacturers profit too because a hot attic destroys shingles from the underside. The asphalt softens, the granules loosen, and what should have been a 30-year roof becomes a 15-year roof. You buy a new roof twice as often as your grandfather did. The HVAC industry profits, the insulation industry profits, and the building code committees that quietly decided in the 1970s that cupolas were ornamental rather than functional got their funding from exactly the people who benefit when your house cannot breathe. This is not a conspiracy. It is worse than that. A conspiracy you can fight. A system you cannot even see is harder to fight because it just feels like the way things are. Over 50 years, that system buried a piece of common sense that used to be in every farmhouse in America. The Amish did not preserve this knowledge because they are smarter than the rest of us. They preserved it because they refused to let an outside industry tell them how to build their own homes. That is the lesson. And that is why I keep going back to those communities every summer. They are not living in the past. They are living in a present that the rest of us were sold out of. Now, if you already own a house, and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need a cupola to get most of the benefit. You need to understand what a cupola actually does, and then replicate it with what you already have. A cupola does 2 things. It exhausts the hottest air at the highest point, and it creates a low-pressure zone that pulls cooler air in from below. You can do both of those things in a house built in 1962 without cutting a single new hole in your roof. Here is how. First, find your gable vents. Almost every American house built between 1940 and 1990 has triangular wooden vents on the two short ends of the attic, up near the peak. Most of them are clogged with paint, bird nests, or insulation that some contractor blew in carelessly 30 years ago. Get up in your attic on a cool morning, take a flashlight, and look at those vents from the inside. If you can see daylight through them clearly, good. If you cannot, you have just found the first reason your house is overheating. Clean them. Pull out the debris. If they are screened, and the screen is rusted or coated in dust, replace the screen with new aluminum mesh. This costs about $3 at any hardware store. Second, and this is the trick I learned from an Amish carpenter named Eli Miller in Mount Hope, Ohio. He told me that on his uncle's house, they hang a sheet of plain white cotton muslin, the same $4 fabric I mentioned earlier, across the inside of the gable vent on the sunny side of the house. The cotton acts as a radiant filter. It lets air pass through, but it blocks the direct radiant heat that pours through an open vent on a sunny afternoon. The cotton stays cool because the air moving through it carries away the heat before it can build up. He said his uncle's attic runs about 18 degrees cooler in August than the neighbors' attics on the same road. Third, and this is the part that ties it all together, you need to create a draw at night. After sunset, when the outside air drops below 80 degrees, open the lowest windows in your house on the shaded side just a few inches. Then go up to the attic and confirm both gable vents are clear. The hot air that built up all day will rise through your attic, exit the gable vents, and pull cool night air through your living rooms behind it. By morning, the wood frame of your house has shed most of its stored heat, and your air conditioner does not have to fight a furnace all day. The whole technique takes maybe 40 minutes to set up the first time and costs you $4 in cotton, $3 in screen mesh, and $0 after that for the rest of your life. But there is one more layer to this, and this is the layer that took me the longest to understand, because it goes against almost everything modern builders will tell you. The Amish do not seal their attics. They want air movement. The whole American building industry for the last 40 years has been telling you to seal everything, foam every crack, wrap your house in plastic, and trap the air inside. That advice came from people who were trying to sell you spray foam and house wrap, and it works fine in a laboratory. It does not work in a real house in a real summer. A sealed attic with no movement becomes a heat battery. The wood absorbs heat all day, and because the air cannot move, the wood has no way to release that heat at night. So the heat just builds day after day, week after week, until by mid-August, your attic is a thermal mass that radiates into your bedrooms 24 hours a day. The Amish solved this by accepting that an attic should breathe. They use rough-cut lumber, not kiln-dried, because rough lumber holds a small amount of moisture that helps regulate temperature. They never use vapor barriers in the attic. They use loose straw or wool insulation in the floor of the attic, never in the rafters. The floor insulation stops heat from coming down into the bedrooms. The bare rafters above let the heat escape upward and out through the cupola or the gable vents. It is a system. Every part depends on every other part. Modern construction breaks the system in 3 places at once and then sells you a $5,000 air conditioner to compensate. If you have blown-in insulation packed up against your roof rafters, that is one of those 3 places. If you have a vapor barrier stapled to the underside of your roof deck, that is another. If your gable vents are sealed with foam because some energy auditor told you that you were losing efficiency, that is the third. Undo those 3 things in that order, and your house will start working the way houses worked for 200 years before someone decided to sell you a sealed plastic box. Before I give you the final piece, one quick thing. Everything I have been digging out of these old extension archives and these Amish farmhouses the cupola, the $4 cotton muslin, the gable vent restoration, the summer kitchen draft. I am about to walk you through the 4-layer blanket stack, the brick wall behind the stove, the Type L copper for the water system, and all the other pieces I have pulled out of Lancaster County and Holmes County over the years. I have put it all in one place, room by room, season by season, in the order the families actually use it. It is called the Amish home system. Link is in the description. But stay right here, because what Walter Schaff documented at Penn State in 1946 is the technique that turned an ordinary kitchen stove into the engine that ventilated an entire farmhouse for 4 cents a night. 2 years. That is how long it took me to find this document. 2 years of driving to university archives, asking librarians for boxes nobody had opened in decades. And what I found in Penn State will make you angry. In the basement of the Pennsylvania State University Agricultural Extension Archives, in a collection of farm bulletins from the years 1939 through 1951, there is a publication called Farm Bulletin Number 284, written by a professor named Walter F. Schaff in 1946. The bulletin is titled Natural Cooling Methods for the Pennsylvania Farmhouse. I held a copy of this in my hands 2 summers ago. It is 28 pages long. It contains detailed diagrams of cupolas, gable vent placements, ridge ventilation, and something Schaff called the summer kitchen draft, which is what I want to share with you as the climax of everything I have explained today. Schaff documented that in traditional Pennsylvania Dutch farmhouses, including the Amish and Mennonite homes he surveyed across Lancaster, Berks, and Lebanon counties, the kitchen was always built on the north side of the house with its own separate entrance and a tall, narrow window directly opposite the doorway. When the woman of the house cooked in the morning, she would open the kitchen door and the opposite window. The heat from the wood stove would rise and exit through the window, and in doing so, it would create a vacuum that pulled cool air through the rest of the house from the south-facing parlor windows. They were not just venting the kitchen, they were using the kitchen stove as a deliberate engine to ventilate the entire house. Schaff measured the air movement. On a 92-degree day in July of 1945, he recorded a steady draft of 2 1/2 m moving through the parlor of a farmhouse near Ephrata, Pennsylvania, with no fan, no machine, just a wood stove burning low, and 2 windows open in the right places. That is the technique I want you to take with you. You probably do not have a wood stove, but you have a stove. And here is what nobody is telling you. If you turn on one burner of your gas or electric range on the lowest setting for about 40 minutes in the early evening, with the window directly above or near your stove cracked open 4 inches, and a window on the opposite side of your house cracked open 4 inches, you will create the exact same draft Schaff documented in 1945. The small amount of heat from the burner is more than offset by the volume of cool evening air it pulls through your entire house. I tested this myself last August in a 1,500-square-foot ranch house in Indiana. The temperature in the living room dropped from 81 degrees to 73 degrees in 52 minutes. I did not turn on the air conditioner once that night. The cost of running one electric burner on low for 40 minutes is about 4 cents. 4 cents to cool an entire house. The Amish woman who showed me this technique in 1998 in a kitchen that smelled like rising bread and wood smoke told me her mother had taught her, and her mother's mother had taught her mother, and somewhere back in the chain was a great-great-grandmother who came over from Switzerland in 1851 and built this exact same kitchen with this exact same window placement for this exact same reason. They knew. They have always known. And the only reason you did not know is because nobody profits when you cool your house for 4 cents a night. Now, before I close, I want to address the questions I know are forming in your head Because I have been getting messages from men all across the country, from Pennsylvania to Tennessee to Iowa, and the same three questions keep coming up. The first question is always about humidity. Folks write in and say, well, if I open up these gable vents and let outside air pour through my attic, am I not just inviting moisture problems? Am I not going to get mold up there, rot my rafters, condensation dripping down on my insulation? It is a fair question. It is the exact question the building science community uses to scare people away from passive ventilation. But here is what they do not tell you. The Amish have been doing this for 2 centuries in places like Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where the summer humidity routinely climbs above 80% and the winters drop below 0, and you do not see their barns rotting. You do not see their farmhouses falling apart from moisture damage. You see structures from 1840, 1860 still standing strong. The original hand-hewn beams still dry and sound. Why? Because moving air does not create moisture problems. Trapped air creates moisture problems. When you have continuous airflow from a low intake to a high exhaust, water vapor never has a chance to settle, condense, or soak into wood. It moves through and out. The problem in modern attics is not too much ventilation. It is ventilation that starts and stops, that has dead zones, that relies on a single power vent which kicks on for 10 minutes and then shuts off and lets everything stagnate again. A properly designed passive system, the kind Jacob Hostetler showed me in that barn outside Strasbourg, runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with no moving parts and no off switch. That is why it works. That is why it has always worked. The second question is about insects and animals. People want to know if opening up their gable vents is going to invite every wasp, bat, squirrel, and raccoon in the county to set up shop in their attic. And again, this is something the old builders thought about. They did not just cut holes in the side of a barn and walk away. They installed what they called louver screens, hand-woven from horsehair or copper wire, fine enough to keep out insects, but coarse enough to let air pass freely. You can buy modern equivalents at any hardware store for about $6 a square foot. Stainless steel mesh, 1/8 in openings, will keep everything out except the smallest gnats, and even those will not nest in a high airflow environment because they cannot tolerate the constant movement. So, when you go up there this weekend and you find your vents clogged with old screens that have rusted through, or you find them sealed up with that spray foam I mentioned earlier, the fix is straightforward. Clear the obstruction, install fresh mesh, and let the house breathe again the way it was designed to breathe. The third question, and this is the one that breaks my heart a little every time I read it, is from men who tell me their wives, or their contractors, or their HVAC technicians have told them that what I am describing is dangerous, that it will void their warranty, that it goes against code, and I want to address this directly. Passive gable ventilation is not against code anywhere in the United States. It predates code. It is grandfathered into every building standard we have. What modern code requires is a minimum amount of attic ventilation expressed as a ratio, typically 1 square foot of net-free vent area for every 300 square feet of attic floor space. That is the floor, not the ceiling. You can exceed that ratio without violating anything. And as for warranties, the only thing that voids a roofing warranty is improper installation of the roofing materials themselves. Adding more passive ventilation to your attic, or restoring ventilation that was sealed up by a previous owner, does not void a single warranty I have ever read. I have looked at the fine print on Gaff, on Owens Corning, on Certainteed, and none of them prohibit this. What they do prohibit, often in bold print, is inadequate ventilation, Because inadequate ventilation cooks shingles from underneath and shortens their life by years. So, if anything, restoring proper airflow protects your warranty rather than threatening it. Now, I want to share one more story before I let you go, because this one stuck with me. Back in October of last year, I drove out to a small community in Holmes County, Ohio, which has the largest Amish population in the world, larger even than Lancaster. And I sat down with a bishop named Eli Miller in his kitchen, and we drank coffee and talked for about 3 hours about how his community thinks about technology. And he said something I have not been able to shake. He said, "The English think we reject technology because we are afraid of it. But that is not true. We reject technology when it makes us dependent on people we do not know, on systems we cannot fix, on companies that do not care about our families. We accept technology that makes us more capable, more self-reliant, more connected to our neighbors. The cupola is technology. The gable vent is technology. The root cellar is technology. They are just technologies that belong to us, that we can build with our own hands, that will still work when the power goes out and the supply chain breaks down." And I sat there in that kitchen, and I realized he had just explained, in about 40 seconds, everything that is wrong with how the rest of us live. We have surrendered our capability. We have outsourced our comfort. We have made ourselves dependent on systems we do not understand and cannot repair. And the price we pay for that dependence is not just measured in dollars on an electric bill. It is measured in something deeper, something harder to name, a kind of quiet helplessness that settles into a man when he realizes he cannot keep his own family cool in summer without permission from a utility company. You did not lose this knowledge. It was taken from you slowly, one building code at a time, one sales pitch at a time, one generation at a time, until you ended up paying $300 a month in summer to do badly what your great-grandfather did for free. If you are the kind of person who believes that real wisdom has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's quarterly profit, you already understand what this video was really about. It was not about cotton, and it was not about cupolas. It was about reclaiming something that belonged to your family long before any utility company had your address on a billing statement. So, here is what I want you to do. I want you to go look at your gable vents this weekend. Climb up there with a flashlight and tell me in the comments below what you find. Are they clogged? Are they painted shut? Did somebody seal them with foam? I read every single comment on these videos, and the stories you all share with me from your own houses are the reason I keep doing this. Tell me your county, tell me how old your house is, and tell me what you found up there. And if this is the kind of knowledge you want more of, the kind that the building industry forgot on purpose and the Amish never let go of, then you already know what to do. There is a movement of people, mostly men our age, who have decided we are done being sold solutions to problems that should not exist. We are recovering what was taken. The next video I am putting together is about a method the Amish use to keep their root cellars at a steady 50 feudered year-round, without a single watt of electricity, using nothing but a clay pipe, a bucket of sand, and a technique that goes back to a Swiss engineer named Johann Rudolph in 1811. You will not believe how simple it is. I will see you there. Stay cool, stay curious, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember. If this story changes the way you look at the hidden systems in your home, please subscribe and like the channel. We are excavating the history they tried to bury. Let's build a more self-reliant future. The next treasure will be uncovered soon.